So one thing that's pretty cool to me is that on a weekend where one of college football's biggest rivalry games, one of the biggest rivalry games in all of sports occurs, there's a non-rivalry game getting just as much press, and that's Alabama taking on Texas A&M, thanks to the drama we saw this offseason between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. Today, we need to give a preview and prediction, talk about the path each team could find to have success and everything in between, but before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a T for Texas A&M or an A for Alabama, letting me know who you think comes out of this game victorious, and then drop me your score prediction. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and if you enjoyed this content, like and comment down below, as those interactions, though seemingly small, are truly massive to content creators such as myself. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, before we can get into the matchups, one thing we have to understand is this game is eerily similar to the one that occurred last year between Alabama and Texas A&M. Texas A&M having 2 losses, dropping a game to Mississippi State and looking like a team that's out of sorts. Alabama looking like a team that's really starting to surge, coming into a game where they're a 20-plus point favorite, inevitably to lose that game. Now, the one big difference in this game, I think, from last year is the trench play. And what I mean when I say that is last year, Texas A&M's defensive front was stingy. They were staunch. And even though they're very talented this year, they're not as prevalent as they were a year ago because of the youth on that defensive line. When we look, there's a lot of 5-star guys on that defensive line, but there's a lot of freshmen on that defensive line, something teams have been able to take advantage of. Likewise, on the other side of the ball for Alabama, I think the play in the trenches has exponentially increased in quality on the offensive line. And even though it's not a complete and finished product, I think we saw last week that there's a pecking order starting to be established in this offensive line, and there's a reason why so many people were excited for Coach Eric Walford and to see what he could do, because I think we're already seeing an offensive line figuring it out, getting it together, and really starting to play confident football for the first time in over a year, which is awesome to see. Love what I'm seeing out of the offensive line for Alabama. But even though this Texas A&M defensive front may not be as stingy as they were a year ago, that doesn't mean I'm not excited to see how Alabama's offensive line is going to go about blocking all of these talented dudes, because at the end of the day, they are still very talented. But now let's get into the matchups. And first and foremost, we have to start with Alabama's offense against Texas A&M's defense. And when we do that, the first question we have to ask is who's going to be in at quarterback for Alabama? Because though we don't have a definite timetable on Bryce Young, Nick Saban says this is an injury he's had before, and he's day-to-day. I think the answer for who will play for quarterback for Alabama is kind of irrelevant. And the reason is because I think whether it's Jalen Milroe or Bryce Young, Alabama's going to have a path to success that they like. If it's Bryce Young, his ability to throw the ball is one that is just rare. He is so good at making a defense pay for any mistake they make, whether that's pre-snap or once the ball is snapped when he moves out the pocket. Anybody that gets out of position, he's going to make you pay. On top of that, the rushing attack Alabama fields right now is a top 10 rushing attack in the nation. So with Bryce Young, you have got to account for everything at the highest level. With Jalen Milroe, you must account for the pass. I've seen so many people questioning whether or not Jalen Milroe can throw the ball. He's at Alabama for a reason, first and foremost. He was a top 100 player coming out of high school for a reason. And secondly, if you watch A-Day, he's already shown he can be successful throwing the football. I'm not saying he's Bryce Young throwing the football, but very few quarterbacks over the past few years in college football can even sniff Bryce Young's level of proficiency passing the football. So if you're Jalen Milroe and you come into this game, what's the path to success for Alabama? Well, first and foremost, it's through the run. Bama has a top 10 rushing attack in the nation. You add Jalen Milroe into that equation, it gets even more dangerous, and A&M has had some trouble stopping the run this year. On top of that, I think we then need to talk about the personnel for whoever is in at Alabama for quarterback. Because when we look at the personnel, you have to like the matchups that are presented, whether that's Cameron Latou, who's Alabama's most veteran pass catcher, or the running backs, because both Jahmyr Gibbs and Jace McClellan are dangerous running backs in the conventional sense, but they're both dangerous out the backfield as a receiving threat, especially Jahmyr Gibbs. So whether it's Bryce or Jalen Milroe, the personnel Alabama is going to be fielding is going to allow for them to create matchups, to create mismatches, and to take advantage of those mismatches. The one thing I'm looking for is for the wide receiver play to continue trending in the right direction. Last week against Arkansas, we saw several wide receivers for the Crimson Tide get some good plays in, look like they're starting to develop some consistency, some confidence, and that's what I hope to see continuing on through the year, because it really proved what I've been saying for a while. There's a ton of talent in that wide receiver room. There's just not a ton of experience in that wide receiver room. I'm interested to see what that looks like, but also I'm interested to see whenever Alabama gets Tyler Harrell back, because his speed is something a defense must account for. If you're Texas A&M's defense, how are you going to go about attacking Alabama's offense? Because, like I said, there are so many areas where you have to like the matchups Alabama can generate. And if you're Texas A&M's defense, you've got to keep everything in front of you. First and second down, very important. Third down is where you cannot give Alabama third and short. They have way too many options to get these third and shorts. They have way too many weapons to get these third and shorts. You have got to dictate the pace of the game if you're Texas A&M. And even though Alabama's offensive line is an offensive line that's improving, you have got to try and disrupt any positive momentum they have going and get to the quarterback. Because that was a way Texas A&M was able to secure their victory last year, was by disrupting any sort of continuity Alabama was able to start forming by getting to the quarterback. So that's going to be huge in this game. The other area A&M has got to be disciplined is in their linebacker play, because their linebackers are going to be asked to cover guys such as Cameron Latou, such as Jahmyr Gibbs, such as Jace McClellan. And if they get a step out of position, they're going to be made pay for it. So they're going to be asked to do a whole lot this game. I'm interested to see what that looks like. And finally, for Texas A&M's secondary, specifically the safety play, that's where I'm going to be watching. Because if it's Jalen Milroe, do you drop a safety in the box to try and help out your rush defense? If it's Bryce Young, you have to probably leave both safeties over top, because I can't imagine you'd feel comfortable with one safety against Bryce Young if Alabama starts getting the ball out quick and is able to start taking advantage of the matchups. However, at the end of the day, you have a tough task in front of you. And if you're Jimbo Fisher and the defensive coordinator trying to prepare for this game, you have two quarterbacks that do two things very differently, and the way the offense can go about attacking is very different. So I do not envy Texas A&M's job this week in preparing for this Alabama offense and whether they have Jalen Milroe or Bryce Young. I think you have to like the matchups Alabama presents on offense. Now, let's flip the script. Let's talk about Texas A&M's offense against Alabama's defense, because right now, as we sit here and talk, Alabama has both a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, ironically, both coming in at number 4 in the nation. If we look, Texas A&M's defense is 57th in the nation, but their offense has not found itself at all. They currently rank as the number 105 offense in the nation, and they don't really have any sort of identity. Right now, they have a lot to figure out. And the unfortunate thing if you're Texas A&M is Ainias Smith goes down to injury. And one thing I consistently talk about, for as out of sorts as Texas A&M's offense has looked over the past few seasons, A-Chain and Ainias Smith are playmakers where you have got to know where they are. You cannot forget to account for those two dudes, because I have seen time after time after time, it looks like the play is sewed up, the ball gets in one of their hands, and they break it loose. They are both dangerous playmakers that you must respect. Unfortunately, Ainias Smith goes down with injury, and it puts even more pressure on A-Chain. And he's a capable player. He is a phenomenally talented player. Personally, I think he's one of the more underrated players in college football. When you look at everything he does for Texas A&M, I really don't think he gets the attention he deserves. Whether it's in special teams, offense, as a passing threat, you name it, he's doing it for this Texas A&M team. And if you're Alabama's defense, he has got to be public enemy number one from the first whistle to the last whistle. You cannot let him get loose in any facet of the game. So if you're Alabama's linebackers, you must make sure your eyes are disciplined and that you're not falling for any sort of play action, any pre-snap motions, and that you're staying home and doing your job. Because if you can account for A-Chain and you can take him out of the equation, you're making the job of the Texas A&M offense even more difficult. So you, if you're Texas A&M, have got to get some sort of spark. You have got to get something going that you can attack this Alabama defense and regain momentum. Because if Alabama's defense is not playing on their heels, you might be in for a long day. If they're able to go downhill and feel like they can attack, it might be a long day. Look, the other area for Alabama's defense that has been really good is the interior defensive line. Alabama's interior defensive line has been a menace all year long, and it's not one name. There are several names, which is awesome to see because over the offseason, we talked about how there was talent there, but not necessarily the experience, and I was really interested in who is going to step up. True freshman Jaheim Otis is a problem. He is going to be a problem in college football, and I cannot wait to see how he continues to develop. A&M has got a big task in front of them, trying to account for the interior of Alabama's defensive front, while also maintaining edge and gap integrity and not letting Will Anderson and Dallas Turner start blowing up your game. The secondary secondary for Alabama has been really solid. Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry, in my opinion, are your two cornerbacks. Those are the two guys that I think have played the best. And the defensive back position as a whole for Alabama has been very, very solid. I think if you're Alabama, you don't want to let Texas A&M even get an inch. You want to take away everything. You want to take away the life of this team in the first quarter and never look back. Because Texas A&M, as much talent as they have on this team, I think it's going to be very hard for them to pull out a win this time. First and foremost, they're not in Kyle Field. They don't have the 12th man, and most importantly, that defensive front isn't what they were a year ago. And that defensive front was a big reason they won the game last year. Bama's offensive line is playing better football, but also they don't have the experience that they did last year on that defensive front. So I think when you look at the combination of factors, I think you have to like Alabama's chances in this game to win and possibly get a really big win. No matter who plays quarterback for Alabama, I think there's a path to victory either way. Texas A&M has not been able to stop the run at all. Off the top of my head, I think they come in like 97th against the run, so you have to like your chances if Jalen Milroe's in the game with the rushing attack Alabama will field, considering it's already a top 10 rushing attack in the nation. And if it's Bryce Young, you're less secure if you're A&M because Bryce can hurt you in every way imaginable. That's where A&M is in a really precarious position, and if we turn the tables, this Bama defense is playing out of their minds, ranking number 4 in the nation, and Texas A&M isn't a top 100 offense in the nation, and one of their premier players went down with injury. I like some of the pieces they have. I think Evan Stewart is going to be a dude in college football. He's a true freshman. So you're going to ask a lot of a true freshman in A-Chain. I think as long as Alabama is able to bottle up A-Chain, they have to like their path to victory. My prediction for this game is that Alabama redeems the loss from last year and handles the Aggies, but I can't wait to hear from you. Hop down in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.